Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. This is Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Thanks for those who are tuned in. I appreciate the loyal listenership. That's a mouthful there. Let's start out today, and I want you to imagine you won the lottery. Not a scratch off. I'm talking about a big lottery, $100 million. You won $100 million. Are you happy? I'm sure I would be happy. I'm sure everyone here would say, yeah, I'd be happy. It would take a lot of troubles away. So you won the lottery. Now I want you to imagine for a second that you were in a horrible car accident. You survived, thank God, but you are wheelchair bound. Kind of disappointing. I would be disappointing. I think it would impact my life in many ways. I guess my first thought is, well, I have lots of thoughts on that. I go for a walk every morning. I guess I would just go for a ride every morning. But my office is upstairs. The office building I have, there's stairs to get to the front door, and there are stairs to get up to my office. So that would certainly be a challenge for me. So two spectrums there. One, you're incredibly happy, incredibly wonderful windfall. For me, it would certainly solve, lots of problems, but certainly takes stress off of certain things. I don't have any big plans to buy a yacht or anything like that, but anyhow. And then the flip side of that, or the other end of the spectrum, being crippled. Now let's fast forward a year. You won the lottery. I won the lottery. You won the lottery. A year later, how do you feel? Or in that horrible accident, leaves you wheelchair bound. How do you feel a year later? And chances are, studies have shown that your level of happiness kind of goes back to where it was. So leading into winning the lottery or having this horrible accident, if you are generally a happy person, you're going to go back to being a generally happy person. Even if you had this horrible accident, you're going to find a way. And that's just the nature of the situation. There's a name for it. Likewise, if you're kind of down person, kind of down in the dumps, and you win the lottery, you're going to be happy. Pay your bills, everything's going to be great, and life will, you'll be happy. But a year later, your level of happiness will kind of go back down. You're going to find yourself just kind of being downtrodden again. Even though you have all this money, your level of happiness will have stayed the same. This principle is known as Hedonic Adaptation. Hedonic is spelled Hedonic. And that's the tendency of humans to quickly return to a stable level of happiness despite major recent positive or negative changes in our lives. As according to this theory, as we make more money, our expectations and desires rise in tandem. So you win the lottery, you're happy, but all of a sudden your expectations rise, right? I'm only flying first class. That was a horrible first class experience. You're comparing one first class experience to the next first class experience, and that becomes your baseline. You're eating out. You're eating out at fancy steak restaurants, and maybe having somebody prepare your meals for you, but you're growing tired of them preparing meals for you. Likewise, on the flip side, if you're wheelchair bound, I'll use myself as an example. I'd figure it out. I'd certainly build a ramp to get into the first part of my office, and then move my office from the upstairs to the downstairs, or maybe just sell the building that I own that my office is in, and find something that would be more suitable. Um, but within a year's time, I'd be like, you know what? I've adapted. I've adapted. I've become used to the challenges I have. I might I might long for being able to, really take the dog for a walk as opposed to being in a wheelchair, going for a walk with my wife. But you know what? I would compensate with other things. And you find joy. You would find joy in your life. I would find joy in my life. And that's the notion of hedonic adaptation. And they've looked at this. This is not just theory. They've looked at people who were lottery winners, and lottery winners in the long run are not any happier than they were when they started. And people who have been in crippling accidents they figure it out. I know a few people who've had crippling accidents, and they're pretty upbeat. They're pretty driven people. And they have I would say every right, but who could blame them if they were mad at the world, mad at their circumstance? They're anything but. Chances are that's how they were going into it. And this shows up in all sorts of different aspects of our lives. I remember when I went off to law school, I went to the Ohio State University Law School, and I grew up about 12 hours away from there, and it was 8 hours away from where I went to college. And I came here, I showed up in Columbus, Ohio, I didn't know anybody, nobody. And I remember in the early days, and this is all pre-email, pre-text, pre-free long distance, everything had a cost to it. Even stamps had a cost, but that was the cheapest thing. I had people writing me. I was kind of becoming pen pals with lots of people that I knew. And, a couple times a week, I could expect mail. I mean, real mail. Someone sending me a letter, and not necessarily long. It might be a card. And, but then there would, if I got 2 or 3 a week, if all of a sudden there was a week I got none, I would be kind of down in the dumps, because my level of expectation had changed. Now, what all this has to do with networking is you need to keep this in mind, because a big piece of, this whole podcast is about building professional relationships, building better professional relationships, building your business network, and getting more benefits out of it. So what I'm driving at is that as you do these things, you're probably sitting here right now. Geez, if I listen to Frank and this and this happens, I'll be set. I'll be totally set. If I get a couple good referrals a month doing the things that we talk about on the Networking RX podcast, I will be set. And the reality is you know what? You'll be set for a while, but in time, your baseline of getting very few referrals to getting a couple a month will change. And when you're not getting a couple months, you'll kind of be ho-hum about it. And there's really not a whole lot that you can do about this. I guess one of the things you can do is be grateful for what you have, and certainly reflect on the times when, for me, the times when I wasn't getting any letters at all. Certainly reflect on those times. Or, if you won the lottery, being able to reflect on the time that you didn't have money. I'm flying first class. This is not the best first class experience I've ever had, but you know what? It's better than not being in first class. And that's the same thing with networking. I run into great people, and I really kind of almost have that first great person I ran into. It was like winning the lottery. And now when I go a couple of weeks without meeting someone great or having a conversation with somebody wonderful who really is interested in me and I'm interested in them, and there's just a lot going on back and forth. When that doesn't happen, you kind of feel like you're in a rut. even though the first one you met was kind of euphoric. And again, it's it's hedonic adaptation. They refer to it as the hedonic treadmill, and it's just you get that um, things go well, and so you're happy with that, and your level of expectation, increases, and then it kind of levels out. We're like, okay, ho hum, I'm getting 2 referrals a month, not 1. But still, it's only 2 referrals a month, and you know what? I'm kind of stuck in a rut. I've kind of plateaued, and then you go to another plateau, and you're excited, but then hedonic adaptation catches up with you again. And I think this is really where gratitude comes into play. Is you just need to be grateful for the types of things that you have in your world, and it's you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days, and you need to just kind of recognize those sorts of things, and change your goals, change what what you're driving for, and just recognize that you're probably better off than you ever were before. I guess from my standpoint, I remember the first franchise I ever sold. I decided I was going to franchise AmSpirit Business Connections. Get all the paperwork together. There's a lot of legal paperwork, probably $25,000 of paperwork, audits and things like that, just to kind of get going with it. It's a commitment to do it, and then you work to try and sell one, and it's hard. That first sale is hard. I tell people that first franchise is the hardest one to sell, and I remember selling it, and was just ecstatic for about 6 months. And then you realize, okay, wait a minute, I only have one franchisee. I joke about it. I say I'm one horrible bus accident. I was one horrible bus accident away from having no franchisees. And then all of a sudden you get the second, and you're excited again. And what I've noticed as with each additional franchisee that I get, I'm still excited. It's still a great win, but I notice that the high, if you will, the good feeling from making it happen lasts less and less. And so I do try to take time and just realize that I just need to be very grateful for what I do have. But still, it's there's just this natural psychology of wanting more, and you just need to know it's there. You just need to know it's there, and take the time to be grateful for what you have. But just a quick lesson on hedonic adaptation. Look it up, and think about that as you go throughout your day, and the wins and losses, and how your highs and lows kind of follow those things, and how they change over time. They'll certainly change over time. At any rate, I appreciate everyone tuning in today. Just to remind you, we are looking for franchisees to add to our system so I can be happy. Not as long as I once was, but I will be happy. So I would certainly love to meet people out there that would be interested in adding on AmSpirit Business Connections to what they're already doing. All of our franchisees do something else for a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week. They are working the AmSpirit Business Connections program. The rest of the time, they are realtors, financial advisors, web designers, coaches, consultants, various types of entrepreneurs, travel agents, kind of runs the gamut. I would love to meet them just to talk about it, to share about it. This is as pitchy as I get about our franchise opportunity. I share about it, and if it's right for somebody, then it's right for them, and we continue on the conversation. If it's not, then that's pretty much it. A lot of times those people will pass me on to somebody else, and eventually it leads to one more franchisee. But the best way to do that is just to simply email them and include me on the email and just say, hey, the two of you should talk. And kind of explanation of who they are and an explanation of who I am. That would be wonderful.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.